Deku sees a girl with long purple hair, and he figures since there's a dance coming up, he should ask her out. He'd walk over to her and say, "Hey, would you like to go to the dance with me?" The young girl would look at him as she'd make a disgusted face. She'd say, "Why would I want to go out with you? You're a loser. But I have Bakugo. He's all I need." As Deku would think back, Bakugo. He'd think back to all of the times that Bakugo's beaten him up. All the times that Bakugo has disrespected him. And she's going out with Bakugo, the prettiest girl in school. Deku would think to himself, it's not fair. This shit isn't fair. He gets everything, while people like me just lie down and have to take it. Screw that. Shit's gonna change real quick. As Deku would put a smile on his face as he'd look at the girl and say, "Oh, well, alright then," as he'd walk away. She'd look at him while he's walking, and she'd say, "Can't believe an idiot Deku like that would try to ask me out. A beautiful princess." As she'd walk back to her class, and we go back to Deku. Deku left school, seeing that he felt kind of sick to his stomach, in fact. Deku would go home and he'd throw up, as he could see blood in his, puke. As he'd think to himself, must have eaten something bad. As he'd go lie down on his bed, as he'd get a ball and start tossing it up in the air. Deku would think to himself, maybe she's right. Maybe I am, all of the things she'd said. Maybe I am a loser. I'm quirkless after all. Hey, but I don't let that stop me from having fun and being who I am. My mom loves me. And I bet there are a ton of girls that would die for a kid like me. Deku would form a smile on his face. Well then, let's start training, shall we? Deku would get up off of his bed and throw the ball to the side. As he'd go downstairs to his garage and he'd start lifting weights. Deku would spend every waking hour out there for the past 9 weeks. And Deku, he's slim. He slim fit. You know them. He's not disgustingly ripped, where to the point where this nigga got veins everywhere. Because that would take time. Plus, that's kind of nasty. But yeah, he's slim, muscular. Is after the 9 weeks, Deku would start to lose his hair. And he'd eventually go bald, which would force him to start wearing a hat, to a lot of people's dislike, because, they liked making fun of his bald head. That just gave him more of a reason to call Deku a loser. But Deku's hair would soon grow back, and it would grow back like you see on the screen, half black, half white. Deku would grow a full head of hair in the following month, as he'd still be training. He would have picked up Kung Fu, as he'd have learned from a master named Master Oliver Kato. Deku would be training his absolute heart out until the day that while he was training, he'd passed out. Deku's nose would have started bleeding along with his eyes. He would have been lifting a heavy, and I do mean a heavy ton of weight. His Deku would have laid there, in now a pool of his own blood. As Deku's hair, it started to get longer. It started to have an orange and blue glow. As Master Avocado would be confused. What the fuck is this? As he would see Deku's hair would now look like this. Deku's eyes would snap open. He'd say, huh? What is this? Is when he looked up, he could see stars everywhere. Literally everywhere. I do mean everywhere. But he'd see stars. As Deku would try to touch one of them. As when he did, the stars would, absorb into him. Deku would begin to touch all of the stars in his hair. It would flow longer and longer. And Deku could feel more power coming into him. As Deku would say, what is this power? As one of the stars would have looked at him and said, Time Rush. Time Rush? Yeah. You get a, specific boost of power. Well, a lot if you gather many stars. 20 or more to be specific. As Deku would say, 20 or more and I get immeasurable power? Wait, what? Yeah. You could even be stronger than that, All Might guy. If that's his name. I could be stronger than All Might? As Deku would think to himself, I'm gonna gather hella stars. Fuck out of here. As he continues to get the stars, as once he got the last one, Deku's hair would go back to normal. As Deku would say, what was that? As Master Avocado's jaw would be on the fucking floor. He'd be sweat dropping. This nigga would be like, the fuck is this nigga on? Who taught this nigga this? Where did he pick this up from? Nani? As fuck. As Deku would be looking at Avocado. Fuck that name, yo. He'd be looking at Avocado as Deku would say, you good? Yes, boy. I'm fine. Now, get back to training. Deku would look at him and smile and say, yes, sir. As he'd start training again. Deku would have perfected a technique that, he's been trying to get down for months. Or, not months, weeks. 2 weeks to be specific. And this was, a piercing jab. A jab that allows you to pierce your enemy's skin and send a high pressure airwave through it. Is when Deku tried this on Master Avocado, he damn near rips his arm off. As Master Avocado was like, this nigga's too strong. Fuck out of here. He's brazy. This nigga's fucking crazy as shit. Brazy ass nigga. As he'd look at Deku and say, yeah, this nigga too strong. He gotta go. As Avocado would give Deku a few scrolls, as he'd say, these are, hidden techniques of the Avocado Sanctuary. You are now stronger than me, and I promote you to master. As Avocado would bow, as he'd be thinking to himself, yeah, I can't fight this nigga. He's different. This nigga's a different breed, especially when he does that star thing. As Deku would look at Master Avocado and he'd smile and say, thank you. As he'd put the scrolls in a bag and he'd bow. As he'd leave. Deku would have started training on his own at his house. He would still go to school, but he'd keep his powers, well, on the low, because, like, he don't want all the bitches on his dick right now. Yeah, this nigga finna have hella hoes. Hold on, like, well, let me think. This nigga finna have fucking, oh no. Oh no, I'm gonna let y'all choose shit. I don't know. But, yeah, Deku would be training on his own, and he would unlock a few of the techniques. The first technique he would unlock is a kick. It is a specific kick, though. The way the kick works is if you hit your opponent, or, well, enemy, or whatever you want to call it, if it lands contact, the kick will completely phase through them, as this kick would, well, it's hard to explain. Basically, if you kick the nigga, you fuck up his organs. That's the best way I could put it, because it phases through their outside, their outside flesh, and it basically fucks up everything on the inside as it passes through, basically. In the second technique, Deku had to pick up daggers for. He chose all blue daggers, as you can see on the screen. This technique, it was called 17 cuts. This technique performed swift movements and precise cutting angles. It could neutralize or kill your target if it wanted to. But Deku would only use the neutralizing version on, well, he would, unless it was like a dangerous threat. But, yeah, he picked up those two techniques. People have also peeped that Deku's fucking hair has changed, and, well, are kind of shocked, but Deku doesn't say shit, and he just goes about his day. We now go to Deku and his mom. They're having dinner, as she'd say, Izuku, where do you go? What do you mean? When you leave, where do you go? Oh, that's right. You don't know, do you? Know about what? As Deku would see, well, he'd form a bunch of stars around him. As he'd grab each and every one of them, and he'd say, ultimate technique, Starry Rush. As Deku's hair would turn back to orange and blue, as his body would start to be enveloped by the, well, aura. As his mom would see that Deku had signs of a quirk, as she'd jaw drop. Where the fuck did he get this from? I don't have a quirk like this, and neither did his dad. Why the fuck does he have it? As Deku would look at her and say, I know what you're thinking. How do I have this type of quirk? Well, as Deku would think to himself, shit, I don't know. What she would tell his mom, as his mom facepalm, as she'd be like, could you give me an explanation, please? Because at this point, I just want to know how you got it. Alright, so basically, I was training with Master Avocado. Alvercato. That's his name? Yeah. It's a weird name, I know. But I was training with Master Avocado, and I kinda started bleeding from my eyes and my nose, and I passed out. As Deku's mom would have formed a absolutely blank face as she says, you passed out. As Deku would have nodded his head, as she says, look me dead in my eyes, as I'm looking into your eyes, and say, you got this quirk just from passing out. I got this quirk from passing bullshit. Huh? Bullshit. Huh? What do you mean bullshit? There's no way. Something had to happen when you were passed out. I don't recall of anything. Oh, Deku. It'll take some time, but I feel like you'll notice it. Is Deku would have been absolutely confused. Just a minute ago, his mom was in shock. Now she knows everything. This nigga's utterly shocked. He's confused. He's, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't fucking know. It'll come to me later. But, yeah, this nigga Deku is fucking confused as shit. As he'd be looking at his mom and he'd just be like, huh, alright, shit. As Deku would finish eating, as he'd go up to his room and he'd say, alright, I'm about to train. She'd say, alright, just be safe. As Deku would say, yeah, I'm probably not going to be safe on the low, but that doesn't matter, now does it? As he would go up to his room and Deku would start to lift weights in his, well, star form, as I'm going to call it for right now. I'll let y'all give it a name. But, yeah, he'd start to lift weights in his star form. For Deku, he's only been able to go into this form for a certain amount of time. Usually an hour or two. Deku's trying to boost it up so that he can go to it whenever he needs to and for however long he needs to, so that he can use it infinitely. He's only been able to use it twice a day, so Deku's trying to push his limits and shit so he can make sure that if he really needs to use his new quirk, as he thinks it is, he'd be ready. Deku would also find out a few of the techniques that this quirk gives him. It gives him, well, fire. A red and blue fire. As Deku could feel it, but it was no regular fire. This was moon fire. As Deku would be confused as a star would be explaining this to him. Yeah, moon fire. Moonfire is basically sparked of stardust and other things from, well, space. But the moon is what ignites this fire. The moon is what makes this fire strong. The sun also plays a part in the orange parts of your fire. But the main part you should be worried about is the blue part. The blue part? Yeah. That fire, it can be used for absolute destruction, or it could be used for healing. Healing, huh? Yeah, your orange fire. That fire is mainly for destruction, but it can also create. Create? Yeah, you can create a few objects out of the fire. You'll be able to create more as time goes on, but just because you're inexperienced, you'll need time. Oh, and the amount of power that you're able to use determines, well, on how many stars that you gather. How many stars do I have now? Well, you've been in the swarm for like, oh no, a few weeks. You've had this power for a few weeks now, so I'd guess you at least have to gather at least 8 to 900 stars by now. Huh, 900 stars. That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, pretty interesting indeed. As the star would look Deku up and down. Hold on, guys. Damn, I don't even know where the fuck I was. Shit, where was I? Alright. Alright. I think I was explaining this nigga powers. Yeah. But, yeah, his first power, as y'all know, is the fire. Creation fire, healing fire, destruction, all that good shit. Then you got, his second power, which is fire, well, not fire, but star magic. This magic can basically be used to replicate, like, devastating, and I do mean devastating, like, element spells. Like, if he uses his fire in an element spell, like, that shit's dangerous. Like, that's dangerous, more dangerous than any other element that he can use, because he has a higher affinity for fire. So, Deku, learning this, would begin to learn, well, more about his abilities, and he'd start training them. Deku would become proficient in using, well, his fire, but he still couldn't quite get down the magic. It was pretty hard for him, seeing that, well, this nigga's not a wizard or no shit like that. But, yeah. Deku, well, he would go to school in the following month. After learning his fires, everybody could see a noticeable change in Deku's, well, behavior. Deku wouldn't really be as outgoing as he used to be. He'd be more cold, thinking he knows it all, thinking, well, knowing that he's more powerful than all of them. So he didn't really associate with any of them. And people started to think that, well, this quirkless loser shouldn't be holding himself at a higher stature than all of us, so they decide to beat him up. After school one day, Deku would go to the courtyard. He'd see 15, 20, 30, 50 people waiting to fight him. As Deku would smile, and he'd look directly in the middle of them, as he'd see that Bakugo was leading all of them. "Hey, you damn Deku! Prepare, because we're finna beat your ass!" As everybody would scream, "Yeah!" As Deku would summon his blades. Deku would say, times 10, 170 cuts. As Deku would swipe twice, as all of them would feel 170 cuts come upon all of their bodies, as they'd fall to the ground paralyzed. As Deku would walk over to them, as he'd pick up Bakugo's head, kick him straight in the face, sending him flying into a wall, as he'd throw his, dagger at Alright, let's try this again. As he'd kick Bakugo, sending him flying into a wall, then he'd throw his dagger at Bakugo's head. It'd miss it just by a few inches. But by the time that Bakugo looked up, Deku was right in front of him, as he'd punch him in the stomach. As before Bakugo could completely go through the wall, he'd be grabbed by the throat. As Deku would say, "You really thought that you could beat me up, huh? Well, Bakugo, let me tell you something." As he'd whisper in his ear, "I'm a different breed, bitch." As he'd slam his head to the ground. As Bakugo would start to cry a little bit, seeing that, well, he's in immense pain, as he doesn't know if Deku wants to kill him or not. But hours go by as Deku was beating the absolute shit out of Bakugo, and nobody can really stop him because nobody really knows that this is going on, and everybody that does know that this is going on is, well, either knocked out or, well, paralyzed. But, yeah. Deku continues to beat the shit out of Bakugo till he's a bloody mess. And once he's done, he throws Bakugo over with the rest of his goons and he says, "Well, you damn bastards, if you try to ever, and I do mean ever, fight me again, I'll end up killing one of you." As he smiles and he walks off. Deku would then think to himself, I didn't even use a tenth of my power. They're weak. As a star would come upon, well, Deku's mind, as it whispered to him, "Deku, you've unlocked a new power." "Huh? A new power? What?" You'll see when you get home. Just hurry up." As Deku would say, "Shit, alright, bet." As he'd run home as fast as he could. As once he got home, Deku would go up into his room and he'd fall asleep, saying that, well, he needed to access his mindscape. Deku would go into his mindscape as the star would be waiting there. The star would look at Deku as it'd say, spiritual projection. Huh? Spiritual what? Spiritual projection. That's your new power. Basically, you can form different things out of your spirit. And, well, once you do, you can use them for combat or service uses. Huh. Spiritual projection. So what? How do I use it? Basically, you just need to focus extremely hard. And you need to contact your spirit. You need to feel it going all throughout your body. And then you need to release that power into the air. And it would form a projection. It manifests the physical living projection of your soul or your spirit. Spirit and soul. Fuck that. As Deku would say, alright, I'll practice that. As he would leave the mindscape, and Deku would begin to practice on spiritual projection. Fast forward 5 days. It's the last day of school, and Deku's, he's gotten it down a little bit, but it's pretty hard seeing that, Deku, he's not that good at meditating. But the star wouldn't allow for Deku not to, quit, so he'd tell Deku to go to a waterfall after school. As Deku would agree, as he'd be walking to school. Huh? What the fuck? Who decorated the school? As Deku would see bright colors everywhere, parades, as Deku would be like, shit, they had this type of budget, why couldn't they give us better food? As Deku would be confused and angry. He'd basically walk into the school as he'd see a teacher in a costume, as the teacher would be handing out gifts. As Deku would take one of them, as it would just be it'd be addressed to him specifically. As Deku would be like, what the fuck is this? As he'd open it, and it'd be a note. Deku, we know that you're quirkless, which is why we suggest that you do not go to UA and withdraw your papers. As Deku would think to himself, if they don't get they dumbasses on us, man, I'll fold all of these stupid asses. As he crumbles up the paper and throws it into the garbage can. He's not a litterer, cause litterer. Hey y'all, let me know if that's a word. Litterer. No, what? That doesn't matter. As Deku would go to class, as he'd see, all of his classmates. The teacher would come in, as the teacher would say, you all want to go to the hero school, and I believe you all can do it. As he looks at Deku with a disgusting glance, except for one of you, as everybody, they wouldn't laugh seeing that they know that Deku's stronger than all of them, but Bakugo would say, damn Deku, just luck, he got lucky in beating me. As Bakugo would be in a full body cast, he'd be only way he got to school was by rolling around in a fucking wheelchair with his ugly, stupid bitch ass. But, yeah. Deku would hear Bakugo say this, and he'd mutter under his breath, didn't I beat the fuck out of you, you bitch ass nigga? As Bakugo would turn back and scowl at Deku, as the teacher would say, alright, you two, calm down. It's the last day of school. As Deku would say, yeah, you're right. So, what do you have in plan? Nothing. You guys are just gonna enjoy the rest of the day. There's stations set up everywhere, and, you guys can go get snacks and treats and all that good stuff. So, have a nice day. As he'd throw the papers up into the air, as everybody would leave the classroom screaming, except for Deku. Deku would walk out like a civilized human being, as he'd walk to a nearby station where he saw a girl that he's kinda had interest in. Deku would walk over to her as she'd say, hey, do you want a candy apple? She'd give Deku a smile. As Deku could feel their smile lighting up his heart. Deku would say, yeah. As the girl would say, are you okay? As Deku would be starting to float off the ground a little bit, seeing that, well, he thinks he's in love. As Deku would regain his composure and say, do you want to see a movie by chance? Yeah, sure, why not? And she'd see that, well, Deku was pretty handsome. As she'd write down her number and give it to Deku. As Deku would think to himself, fuck yeah, score, bitch. Finna make this girl my girlfriend. Easy, simple. As Deku would leave the station, as he'd still be looking at the girl, and he'd have a huge blush on his face, as so would the girl. Once the school day was over, Deku basically called her, and she answered, as Deku said he was coming to pick her up. Deku would have picked her up, and they went to go see a romance movie. And after the movie, they went to dinner. Deku took her to some fancy restaurant using his mom's card, as she'd be spazzing because Deku was running up a fucking check. As the girl would have enjoyed the meal, as she would have said, well, I'm pretty sure you don't know my name, and I don't know yours, yet we're on a date. As Deku would say, yeah, we never really exchanged names. As Deku would smile at her as he'd stand up and he'd bow to her and say, I'm sorry for that. My name is Izuku Midoriya. As she'd stand up and she'd bow too, as she'd say, it's cool. My name's Star. As Deku would look up. Huh? Your name's what? Star. As Deku would say, wait, Star? Hey, buddy, as Deku would think to himself, did you have something to do with this? No, not really. Well, I was the one who pushed you off the ground when, well, you saw her, but I didn't really have a plan in fucking with your relationship status. As the Star would say, as Deku would regain his consciousness as he'd come out of the mindscape. As he'd look at the girl and he'd smile and say, well, I like stars. I like them a lot, in fact. Matter of fact, Deku would summon a star as he'd give it to the girl. He'd say, whenever you're in trouble, just say star and it'll protect you. It'll also alert me. As Deku would smile and he'd say, oh, what's your last name? Oh, my name's Star Yagorozu. Yeah, she's Momo's sister. But, yeah. Deku would say, Star Yagorozu. Huh. Interesting. As they'd finished their dinner, and Deku would walk her home. Once they got to her house, Deku would basically say goodnight to her as he'd go to leave. As she'd pull him back and say, aren't you forgetting something? As Deku would have said, oh yeah. As he'd have kissed her. But as he'd have done this, the door would have opened and Mr. Yagorozu would have come out. What the fuck are you doing with my daughter, you lowlife? As he would have kicked at Deku, sending him off the porch. As Deku would have jumped back. Hey man, what's your deal? As Star would have said, Dad, stop! As Mr. Yagorozu would have said, no. This lowlife should have nothing to do with my daughter. Especially the heir to the Yagorozu fortune. I thought Momo was the heir. Not after the stunt she pulled. Now come in here. We're gonna have a long chat about this lowlife. As Deku would have kind of gotten angry seeing that this man might ruin his relationship. As Deku's hair would have started to flow up. As the man would have saw this, and so would Star. As Deku would look at the man, as he'd say, Star fusion. As the stars would start to absorb into Deku. As one of the stars would form gloves, as Deku would put his hands into the gloves and say, come at me. As Mr. Yagorozu would have smiled, and he'd say, if you can beat me, I'll let you date my daughter, why not? As Deku would have smiled and say, hell yeah, let's do it. As Mr. Yagorozu will give him a creation quirk, saying that Momo has that quirk, why not? He would have created a bow staff as he'd have rushed at Deku. He'd have swung the staff at Deku, but Deku would have completely disappeared from his sight, as he would have reappeared behind him and he'd punch him in the back. This one punch sent the man flying into a wall, knocking him out on contact, my EG, as Mr. Yagorozu would be knocked out cold. His Star would have run over to her father and say, wow, you really pack a punch, don't you? As Deku would have said, I didn't really hit him. And she'd say, wait, what are you talking about? I grazed him, but I didn't completely hit him. I guess I don't know my own strength, huh? As Star would have said, huh, interesting. As she'd be thinking to herself, is the legend true? Is he the one I read about? As Star would have, erased this thought from her mind for the moment, saying that her father was on the ground, knocked the fuck out. As Deku would have helped bring him inside, as Star would have said, don't go back out there. It's starting to rain. You can just stay here with me. As Deku would have smiled and he'd say, alright, just let me check in with my mom. As he would have called his mom, as he'd say, Mom, I'm gonna stay out for the rest of the night. Is that alright? As his mom would say, yeah, just send my card back, why don't you? As Deku would kind of smirk, as he'd say, alright. As before he sent it back, he ordered a lot of snacks and drinks to the house. As his mom would see this, and she'd say, that damn bastard! I'm gonna kill him when he gets here. As Deku would have sent the card back to his mom on a star, as his mom would have got the card and she'd have almost broken and raged. But we're gonna cut back to Deku, who is now snuggling up with Star as they're watching an action movie. No, they're watching a scary movie. Yeah, that sets the mood for what I'm about to do. Alright, so Deku and young Star. Wait, do I want them to be in high school? Yeah. They're in high school. UA is a college. Yeah, UA is a college. So, Deku would have snuggled up with Star as she'd have gotten scared when, one of the creatures in the movie jump scared. As she'd have jumped into Deku's arms, Deku would have looked at her eyes as he would get lost in them. She was beautiful. As Deku would have leaned in, Star would do the same as they shared a passionate kiss. After this kiss, they couldn't stop as they began making out viciously, and I do mean viciously. That shit was amazing. But yeah, they started to make out viciously, and this led to another thing, and, well, yeah, they woke up in the same bed, naked. But, yeah. And, yeah, Deku didn't use rubber, so, yeah. They're having a kid. I'm a bastard. But, yeah, they're having a kid. And by this time, Mr. Yagorozu would have woken up, and he'd have walked to Star's room, saying that, well, he wanted to check on her. And when he got there, he saw Deku and Star in the same bed, naked, kissing. This nigga would have formed a belt so fast as he rushed to Deku and he hit the shit out of him. This nigga Deku went flying. My nigga hit a wall. As he made an imprint, as Deku would have said, "The fuck, nigga, damn. Who hurt you?" "Oh, I guess I did." As Deku would have had a little smirk on his face as Mr. Yagorozu would have said, "What are you smirking at? Star, what did he do to you?" He impregnated me. That's what he did." As Mr. Yagorozu's jaw completely dropped to the ground. Sweat dropped, facepalm, everything. My nigga couldn't believe his ears. He couldn't believe it. He thought this day would never come. He didn't want this day to come. My nigga was confused. You said what? You said he did what? He impregnated me. Shut your dumb ass up. You're aborting it, right? No. I want to have my child with him. Fine. Do whatever you want. I don't care. You're just gonna end up just like your sister. And Momo, hearing this, would say, "What do you mean, just like my sister? Momo's a respectable young woman." "Yeah, but she's a slut." As Deku and Star would hear this, Star would have rushed at Mr. Yagorozu, or her dad, as we now see a glimpse of her quirk. I'll say she has creation magic. Why not? No. Let's say I can't think of a good name right now. I'll let y'all choose. Choose her quirk. It has to be based around creation though. But yeah. She would have created something. Let's say a tennis racket. No, a bat. And she swung at this nigga face. He barely dodged, but as he dodged, he was met with a kick from Deku. As Deku would have kicked him directly in the face, sending him into Star's bat. As they both would have said, "Don't you dare talk about Momo like that ever again." As Deku doesn't even know her. So he would have said, "Don't you dare talk about your daughter like that in a manner. Fuck. Don't you ever talk about your daughter in that manner again, you bastard." As Star and Deku would have left the room as they were too pissed to be in the presence of that man. As Mr. Yagorozu would have been on the ground, well, bleeding from his head. As Deku and, well, Star would have prepared for what today was. The UA entrance exam. Yup. I just said fuck the 10 months, I know. But, yeah. It's the UA entrance exam time, and, well, they've trained enough, so they get dressed and walk to UA. after eating breakfast. Deku and Star run into Momo on the way there, and Star runs up to her sister and hugs her. She says, "Momo, where have you been?" As Momo would have said, "Oh, I've been in my boyfriend's house. I kinda live there now, seeing that, well, Dad kicked me out." He did what? He kicked me out. He said he didn't want me to date a lowlife, and he beat him up. As Deku would have said, "Well, it's cool. We got his revenge for him. We actually just beat the shit out. We actually just beat the shit out of your dad." As he would have gave her a thumbs up, and she'd have said, "Who are you?" His Star would have butted in, saying, "He's gonna soon be the father of my child." What? As Momo's jaw would have dropped. "Yeah, he's my boyfriend, Izuku Midoriya." As Momo would have been absolutely confused, as she'd have been like, "When did you meet him?" Yesterday, and we really hit it off. And we're probably destined to be destined to be soulmates." As Momo would have been like, "Alright, whatever you say, sis." As she'd have looked at Deku and said, "If you dare hurt her or betray her, I will personally hunt you down, rip your balls off, and feed them to you. Am I understood?" As Deku would have looked at her with fear in his eyes for the first time, she'd have said, yes, ma'am." As Momo and Star would have laughed. As Momo would have said, "Where are y'all going, by the way?" "Oh, to the UA entrance exam." "Oh, what a coincidence. I was heading there too." "So what, you're going to UA?" "Yeah, but I'm not doing the entrance exam. I kinda got recommended." So did I." So Deku's the only one, or Izuku, as nah. Deku. Star would have said it. Deku is the only one taking the exam? "I guess so." As Deku would have said, "Hell yeah. I'm gonna show off like I've never showed off before." "Oh, and Star?" "Yeah. I'm gonna show you what your, well, child's gonna be like." "What do you mean?" You'll see. Hold on, guys. Alright, I'm back. But yes, Deku would have said that she would have known what her child would be like after watching him. And they would have finally arrived at the school, and Deku would have went into the exam hall. He would have aced the written exam, and, well, it comes to the fighting, or the robot exam, which I still don't understand the point of. Like, what the fuck, y'all? Like, big ass robots, like, who's fighting them? But, Deku would have said, when President Mike would have said go, he would have stayed back, and he'd have said, "Star power, times 50. As a bunch of stars would have collected in Deku. As his aura, it would have gotten large. As Deku would have appeared as a blur. He'd have rushed through everybody. He'd have slain almost every robot there. Is Deku's mentality at that moment. It would have changed. As people could see ferocity in his eyes. His Star would have said, Is this what he meant? Is this how our baby's gonna be?" As she would have smiled and said, "He's gonna be one strong-ass kid. Or she, who knows?" As Deku would have finished destroying most of the robots, leaving barely any for anybody else. So Nezu would have called off the entire exam, and he'd have passed Deku, as he would have gotten more robots, and, well, everybody would have continued that shit. Bakugo would have seen the Deku pass, and he'd be absolutely pissed. How the hell could that deku pass? Is what he would be thinking. Because he's a bitch. Bitch ass nigga, hoe ass nigga, stupid ass nigga, faggot ass nigga. Run them hands, boy. Matter of fact, I'm not even. But yeah. Deku would have passed the test. He'd have went along with Star, and him and Momo and Star would have went out to eat. Once they were done eating, Momo would have went back home to her boyfriend, and Deku and Star would have rented out a hotel with, well, Deku's money, saying that, well, he had some shit saved up. He just didn't want to spend that shit, because, like, you know how kids be. Stingy ass little bitches. But, yeah. They would have stayed at a hotel and made out the entire night. Deku would have even, hit that shit one more time and gave her a double dose of that, sperm 3000. But, that doesn't matter. Yeah, let's just say that. But, fuck, I'm an idiot. Yeah. Deku would have gave her that dick, and they both would have went to sleep. I'm finna be leaving it off here, because I got some shit to do. But, yeah. Bye.